Good morning, everyone. I hope y'all are having a great day today. This is our very last video. We're going to take a break for the summer, so we're going to try to pull in everything that we've talked about, or at least most everything that we've talked about since school was out in March. Just give you a little review and stuff, and hopefully one of us will be back in the schools and see you guys, probably Miss Greta, but hopefully we'll be back in your schools in August when you guys start back up. We'll see. All right, so we're going to talk about our attitudes and our values, okay? Because how our environment looks and how our county looks depends a lot on our attitudes and what we value, and what we put the most value means what you put the most effort into, okay? So with regard to the environment, a lot of attitudes and behaviors and values have changed over the years. But we're going to go back in time to when people really cared about the environment and talk about a few things, okay? Not saying that people don't care about the environment now, but when people made more effort to take care of the environment than maybe what we're doing right now. We have a long ways to go for sure. All right, so in the mid-1800s, a lot of Americans were either farmers, or even if they weren't a farmer, they still lived in a small rural community, okay? So a lot of the people spent their whole entire days just outside in nature. And in 1862, there was an act that was created called the Homestead Act. And people were given free tracts of land if they could clear the trees and build a farm or a ranch, and they had to live there. I think they had to live out there for like 3, 4, 5 years. It was something like that. I'm thinking it's 5. But anyways, if they could live out there and have that farm and maintain it and be successful, the land was theirs. All right, so besides the Homestead Act, there was other legislation like mining laws that came into effect that allowed and even encouraged people to clear the land. But even early on, people who had a vision like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry, those guys, now we hear a lot about them because they talk a lot about freedom. They talk a lot about, being free from Britain and all this stuff. But even those guys, when they were starting the country of America and, had fought the American Revolution and all that stuff, even all of those people understood the importance of not depleting our resources. That means taking care of the things that we are given, okay? So even back then, in the days of George Washington, he saw that we needed to take care of the environment and what God had given us. So President Theodore Roosevelt, by the time he became president, he was very concerned and valued preserving the wilderness and conserving natural resources. And he particularly wanted to preserve the timber, the soil, the wildlife, and the minerals. So that's a big jump from the Homestead Act and the mining laws that said, hey, let's clear all this land out. Theodore Roosevelt came along and said, no, we need to preserve our timber. We need to preserve our natural resources and our minerals and all that stuff. We need to do something to preserve it. So he felt like that resources had been mismanaged for a while, and they probably had, and that if it continued to be mismanaged like that, there would be dire future consequences, like bad things would happen. So as America's population continued to just skyrocket, because we had, we had a lot of immigrants coming in and trying to find a better life. So our population just continued to grow. So by 1908, he held a White House conference, and he developed the National Conservation Commission. And so this commission conducted the nation's first comprehensive natural resource inventory. So he was inspired by some writers of his day, people who wrote books and stuff, like Henry David Thoreau, who wrote lots of things about nature, and John Muir. He was big into preserving nature and writing about nature. So Theodore Roosevelt created the Antiquity Acts, and that is where we got our national monuments and our national parks, was through this act. And we also had the creation of the National Forest Service. Okay, so all of that came under that Antiquities Act, and because he wanted to conserve our natural resources. All right, so during this period, the National Park Service, the National Resources Board, and the Soil Conservation Service, and the Wildlife Restoration Act were all created to try to preserve the environment that we lived in. And, that worked for a little bit, but then in the 1960s, under President John F. Kennedy, he started a natural resource program to preserve wilderness areas and to develop marine resources and preservations of shorelines for public use. So, if you go out and visit beaches in North Carolina and Virginia, they have national seashores that are protected, but you can go and visit them. And he also helped to expand outdoor recreation opportunities. And we had lots of conservationists through the years, like Rachel Carson and Aldo Leopold. We had environmental writers who inspired a lot of people in the nation. But, even though all those things were happening, people still did not understand, how to manage their waste. And so, if you lived in the city, a lot of times the city had garbage pickup, but if you lived out in the country, you didn't. So a lot of people threw their trash out, behind their house, or they found a place in the woods and they dumped their trash. And if you're ever out in the woods hunting or hiking or whatever, and you come across old homesteads, you're going to find huge trash piles, and it's lots of glass and metal and stuff like that people threw out because they didn't have anything else to do with it. We didn't have convenience centers back during those times. And so a lot of people also didn't understand about throwing your trash in the oceans and in the waters and stuff. A lot of people think that water's magic and that when you throw it in there, it just poof, disappears. But we know that that's not true. So, there was a lot of pollution in the oceans, and there was lots of air pollution because lots of people were driving cars, and the cars that were driven back then were not energy efficient. They gave off a lot of exhaust. And so in the 1970s, late 60s, early 70s, a lot of people were looking around saying, our nation's, our country, our world, let's put it that way, our world is in trouble. Because there was so many more people, pollution was skyrocketing, and they were like, we need to do something. So in 1970, there were a lot of laws that took place that focused on the environment. And in 1970, the Environmental Protection Agency was also formed. And, of course, lots of laws that dealt with how to dispose of trash and landfills and all that stuff came about. But in 1970, we also had the very first Earth Day, which was trying to help people to see and to have an awareness of taking care of your environment. All right. So I am going to read to you a few of the writings of these people who enjoyed nature so much. All right. So this is from Wendell Berry, and he wrote An Entrance to the Woods. All right. And he was born in 1934. So he wrote a lot about farming in the wilderness and having a different attitude toward the land. Okay. So this is just a little piece from him. Today, as always, when I am afoot in the woods, I feel the possibility, the reasonableness, the practicability of living in the world in a way that would enlarge rather than diminish the hope of life. I feel the possibility of a frugal and protective love for the creation that would be unimaginably more meaningful and joyful than our present destructive and wasteful economy. The absence of human society that made me so uneasy last night now begins to be a comfort to me. I am afoot in the woods. I am alive in this world, this moment, without the help or the interference of any machine. So he was talking about, people using machines for everything and being wasteful. And that's a concern that people have today, that we are wasteful, that we waste a lot of things that we shouldn't be wasting. All right, this next one is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And this is from his Nature Essays, the second series. Ralph Waldo Emerson was born in 1803, and he was educated at Harvard Divinity School. He taught and preached, and he later became a philosopher and a writer and a poet. So this is just a little bit from his. In the woods is perpetual youth, ongoing youth. Within these plantations of God, a decorum and sanctity reign. A perennial festival is dressed, and the guest sees not how he should tire of them in 1,000 years. In the woods we return to reason and faith. There I feel that nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity, which nature cannot repair. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or parcel of God. So he was talking about how that being out in nature connects him much more closely. All right, this next one is from Edward Abbey, who wrote Appalachia and Appalachian wilderness. He was born in 1927, and a lot of his writing is based on his experiences as being a fire lookout and a park ranger in the Appalachian Mountains. So a lot of times, in Del Rio, there's a Meadow Creek fire tower. So back a long time ago, people lived in those fire towers, and that was their job to watch for fires. They were very high up above the trees and all that stuff, and they would watch to see if there were any forest fires that started, so that the wildland firefighters could go in and fight the fires and stuff. So this is what he wrote. There was a town set in the cup of the Great Hills and the Alleghenies, a town of trees, 2-story houses, red brick hardware stores, church steeples, the clock tower, the courthouse, and over all the blue haze, partly dust, partly smoke, but mostly moisture that veils the Appalachian world most of the time. That diaphanous veil that conceals nothing, and the field beyond the town, the zigzag of rail fences, the old gray barns and gaunt Gothic farmhouses, the webwork of winding roads and the sulphurous creeks and black coal mines, and scattered everywhere the woods, the trees, the vegetation cradle of North America. All of those trees transpiring patiently through the wet and exhilarating winds of spring, through the heavy, sultry, sullen summers, and into the smoky autumns, through seasons, years, millennia, sensitive and sensible plants with who knows what aspirations of their own. So that is definitely just a appreciation of the views that he had, and of the beautiful scenery of nature that he saw. All right, so our next one is from Annie Dillard, who wrote Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. She was born in Pittsburgh in 1945, and she wrote mostly about the Roanoke Valley and the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's amazing that trees can turn gravel and bitter salts into these soft-lipped lobes, as if I were to bite down on a granite slab and start to swell, bud, and flower. Trees seem to do their feats effortlessly. Every year, a given tree creates from scratch 99% of its living parts. Water lifting in tree trunks can climb 150 feet per hour in full summer, and a tree can heave a ton of water every day. A big elm in the single season might make as many as 6 million leaves, each wholly intricate, without budging 1 inch. A tree stands there, accumulating dead wood, mutely rigid as an obelisk, but secretly it seethes, splits, sucks, and stretches. So she's writing about the life of a tree and everything that a tree does and how it helps the environment. All right, the last one I'm going to read here about this stuff, and I have one more thing I'm going to share with you, is from Nathaniel Hawthorne. You might know him. He wrote Hiawatha, but this is from his young Goodman Brown. So he was born in 1804 in Salem, Massachusetts. He was a descendant of the Puritan settlers, and his writings often focused on and rebelled against his puritanical teachings regarding good and evil. And maddened with despair, so that he laughed loud and long, did Goodman Brown grasp his staff and set forth again, at such a rate that he seemed to fly along the forest path rather than to walk or run. The road grew wilder and drearier and more faintly traced, and vanished at length, leaving him in the heart of the dark wilderness, still rushing onward with the instinct that guides mortal men to evil. The whole forest of people with frightful sounds, the creaking of the trees, the howling of wild beasts, and the yell of Indians, while sometimes the wind tolled like a distant church bell, and sometimes gave a broad run around the traveler, as if all of nature were laughing him to scorn. Okay. All right, now, this last thing that I want to read to you is from Chief Luther Standing Bear, who was a chief of the Lakota tribe, which is the Sioux Indians, about how they viewed taking care of the earth. It says the Lakota was a true naturalist, a lover of nature. He loved the earth and all things of the earth, the attachment growing with age. The old people came literally to love the soil, and they sat or reclined on the ground with a feeling of being close to a mothering power. It was good for the skin to touch the earth, and the old people liked to remove their moccasins and walk with bare feet on the sacred earth. Their teepees were built upon the earth, and their altars were made of earth. The birds that flew in the air came to rest upon the earth, and it was the final abiding place of all things that lived and grew. The soil was soothing, strengthening, cleansing, and healing. That is why the Indian still sits upon the earth, instead of propping himself up and away from its life-giving forces. For him to sit or lie upon the ground is to be able to think more deeply and to feel more keenly. He can see more clearly into the mysteries of life and come closer in kinship to other lives about him, kinship with all creatures of the earth. Sky and water was real and active principle. For the animal and bird world, there existed a brotherly feeling that kept the Lakota safe among them, and so close did some of the Lakotas come to their feathered and furred friends that in true brotherhood they spoke a common tongue. The old Lakota was wise. He knows that man's heart away from nature becomes hard. He knew that lack of respect for growing living things soon led to lack of respect for humans too. So he kept his youth close to its softening influence. So I want to think about that last paragraph before I show you my craft and get off of here. It says the old Lakota was wise. It says he knows that man's heart away from nature becomes hard. He knew that lack of respect for growing living things soon led to the lack of respect for humans too. So he's talking about the lack of respect for the environment. We've seen a lot of things here lately that, we've seen lots of litter, and that shows a lack of respect. Whether somebody's littering somebody's yard or the sides of the road or a field or out in the woods, that shows that whoever threw that down has a lack of respect, not only for the earth, but also for the person who owns that land. There is no respect. Okay? When people throw their trash around the lake, that shows a lack of respect. They do not care. And we've talked about, in classes and stuff, if you remember, we've talked about that one of the reasons that people litter is because they do not care. They have a lack of respect. That is one of the main reasons why people litter. So it says that when people have a lack of respect for the environment, for the living and growing things, then they will eventually have a lack of respect for humans. So it may be that you find that people who litter may not be as kind to human beings as they should be. It kind of goes hand in hand. If you respect the environment, then you also respect others. Because you're not only, a lot of times that land belongs to somebody else. So when you respect the land, then you're also respecting the person who owns that land by not throwing your trash down. You think about if someone were to come to your house and trash it up and leave trash all over the place and just leave a big mess and say, well, I'm going home, and leave you with this big, huge mess to clean up, are you going to want to have them back over to your house? No, because every time they come, you'd have to clean up after them. So that's a lack of respect, okay? So when we respect the environment, then we're more likely to respect other human beings as well. It's respect for everything, okay? So please make sure that while you're out and enjoying nature, that you would please not litter. Please do not destroy things that do not belong to you, okay? And that could be tearing things down, burning things down. If it doesn't belong to you, then you respect that and you take care of it, okay? And another thing that shows disrespect, and we're seeing an incline in this, I think, in the county, there is a whole lot of graffiti. We used to not have a very big graffiti problem. We had a few patches where there was always some graffiti, but it seems like there is more of it. When we did our litter index, there was a lot more graffiti. We've had reports of graffiti in some other places as well now that didn't used to be there. So that definitely shows a lack of respect, okay? So as you're enjoying places this summer, please make sure to put your waste in place. Please make sure to not destroy things that do not belong to you, and please do not leave your graffiti, whether it's spray paint or carving your initials into something or taking a magic marker and writing your name all over it. Nobody wants to see who loves who and who's been there and all that stuff, okay? So please just have respect for the places that you visit, because those places belong to someone, and that shows respect to that person who owns that property, okay? All right, so let me show you our craft real quick. I promised you I would show you how to do a Father's Day craft, all right? So I took a toilet paper roll, and I covered it with some construction paper. I have a piece of cardstock, and I wrote Happy Father's Day on it. I have cut some slits in the sides of my toilet paper roll for my paper to slide right down in. Then, I didn't make mine up high enough. I'll have to redo this, but it should be to where you can see. And then my picture, I'll show you here in a minute. I kind of messed up. All right. Then, I printed out a picture and put it on the front of the toilet paper roll. And the picture is too big. Either the picture's too big or I didn't have this sitting up high enough. But anyways, I'll fix it later. But anyways, you've got this little thing that says Happy Father's Day, and it's like a picture holder. Okay? So I had it slid over here like this so you could kind of still see it, but I'm going to have to make it either print another picture out and make it smaller or make this up higher. Okay? But anyways, it should say Happy Father's Day, and it's like you could use it as a card, or you could just use it as a picture frame type thing or whatever. Okay? So it's going to be something cute for your dads or grandpas or uncles, or if you just have, you know, a special man in your life who's done a lot for you, they'll appreciate a picture of you. Everybody likes to get pictures. All right, so there's a cute little Father's Day craft made out of recyclable material. This green construction paper was just some leftover I had from another project, and this was leftover from another project, and the only thing I did was I printed out this picture right here. Okay. All right, guys. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful summer. Hopefully we will see you guys when school starts back. And hopefully we'll see you around when we do some projects and some cleanups and stuff. You know, and that's one other thing, too, I wanted to mention about respect and stuff. If you want to organize a cleanup, or organize, if you know a place that's safe to get to that has graffiti on it and paint over it, that's always a great thing to do. But just remember, if you're going to pick up litter, especially right now during these times, make sure that you have a grabber and gloves. Okay, do not pick up trash with your hands right now. Okay, and just make sure that you are protected. Okay, we're not telling you to go do it, but if you choose to do it, please make sure that you protect yourself, okay? Because germs can live on trash, and I've always told my kids, never pick up trash without a glove, okay? So that is especially important right now. Never pick up trash without a glove, and I always use grabbers and gloves. So please just make sure that you protect yourself and that you wash your hands thoroughly after you've picked up trash, okay? But if you feel unsafe doing that, please just wait. You know, the trash is not going anywhere. So, but if you want to, you know, just please make sure. We can't stop you from doing it, so please just make sure that you protect yourself and that you go through all the proper sanitation guidelines to keep your hands clean, okay? Don't touch your face and all that stuff because you'll spread germs, all right? Okay, guys. Well, hopefully we will see you when school starts back in August, and we hope you have a great summer. Have a good day. Bye.